if you live life long enough, you're going to take hits. You're going to lose people you love. You're going to lose jobs. But you have to think about what you're going to do in those moments, and you have to train yourself for what you're going to do in those moments.
Welcome to the Royal Flush Podcast. My name is John Overy. I'm the VP of Sales here at Royal Flush. The goal of this podcast is to give you a behind-the-scenes look of our company and talk in great detail about our state-of-the-art pipelining technology. Additionally, a big part of this podcast is going to be bringing on local business people, entrepreneurs, people from the Rhode Island area to really hit on the 3 I's. We want to talk to interesting people who have interesting stories that ideally spark interesting conversation that you're really going to enjoy listening to. In this episode, we talked to Joe Sbardella, who's an internal employee here at Royal Flush. Joe goes through his history in the fashion business, takes us from his childhood to now as a VP of sales and upper corporate management, and how he lost his job during COVID. Joe has a fantastic story. Hope you enjoy it. Subscribe, listen. Thanks a lot. Welcome to the Royal Flush Podcast. We have a very special guest, an internal employee, Mr. Joe Sbardella. Joe, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning to you. Joe, you have joined our organization about 6 months ago now.
Just about.
And you are our in-the-field representative out there calling on anybody and everybody to educate them about Royal Flush, correct?
That's correct.
All right. So before we get into what you do here, I think you've got an amazing background. You lived a very, I think, eventful life, successful life so far. So take me back to your childhood. I want to know where you grew up. I want to know a little about your history. And then tell me maybe one specific memory from your childhood that sticks out, whether it be an event, something exciting. Maybe, I don't know, you fell off a bike. Tell me a memory from your childhood. Tell me about you growing up.
Well, I grew up locally here. I grew up in Warren, Rhode Island. Originally we lived on Federal Hill. My father is Italian, and he grew up on Federal Hill. Anyway, moved us to Warren when I was about 5 years old. And we lived on the north end of Warren in a triple-decker. Mm-hmm. It was a neighborhood where I can tell you people didn't have a lot of money, but it didn't feel that way to me.
Okay.
I felt like we were rich because we had everything. I had bicycles and all the things that a 5 to 10-year-old kid could want while we lived there.
What year is this?
It was, I can't do the math quickly enough, but it was, you're talking about 63 years ago.
Okay.
I'm 68 years old, so you can do that math. A long time ago. And I remember, I was an altar boy, so I used to walk to...
Oh, that explains a lot.
I used to get up in the morning when I was 7 and 8 years old. I went to the French school there, and I used to walk to church in the morning with my altar boy outfit over my shoulder, and I'd kneel for 7 o'clock Mass, and then I would take Latin lessons, and then I would go to school.
Wow.
So, my parents insisted on Catholic educations. I don't know what good it did, but probably some, Probably the memory that I have the most is I was in grammar school. I guess I want to say I was about 10 years old, and I don't remember the date, but I remember the teacher coming in and announcing that President Kennedy was assassinated.
Oh, really?
And I forget what grade I was in, second or third grade, I want to say. And they came in and said, President Kennedy's been assassinated, so, there's school's canceled for the rest of the day. Now, a 7-year-old, the impact of that really didn't...
You were excited.
Exactly, right, to get the rest of the day off. But, looking back on it, that was a really significant, event. My parents were hardworking people. They were... my dad was a draftsman. He went to night school to become a draftsman. Prior to that, he worked in a factory. My mother was a waitress at a restaurant in Warren for 32 years. As far as I can remember, they worked double shifts, both of them. They were always, working double shifts, and they always held a couple of jobs. And so, I come from a place where, if you wanted something, you had to earn it.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up, he didn't ask my father for $50 because he didn't have it. Mm-hmm. So everything I ever got, I pretty much had to go out and earn, and they instilled a work ethic in me that has been a valuable tool to me, throughout my life.
Yeah.
I have to, back then it seemed like they were the toughest parents in the world, but looking back on it, they were great parents who taught me how to live in this world the right way. You know.
Now, maybe let's fast forward to 18, 19, 20, 21. I know you've had some unique travels across the United States. You lived in a lot of different cities and towns. Tell me about you becoming a man, we'll say, that transition, and then how you started in your professional career, what you ended up doing for the majority of your life.
Well, I went to college. I went to URI, pre-med. Couldn't get into medical school. Quit college, second semester, senior year, walked out of a physics lab. Because I realized, because I couldn't get into medical school, I was going to end up with a job for the rest of my life that I didn't want to have, working in a biochem lab, whatever that was. I was going to buy a car and a condo, and that was going to define my life. So I was dumb and smart at the same time. I think I was smart because I got away from a life that might have been mundane, and dumb because I never finished my college education.
Gotcha.
But I walked out the door and I got on a plane a few weeks later, flew to California, and I went out there to surf and skateboard, waited tables, ended up working on yachts, and at one point sailed a boat from Florida to Tonga. It was an 8,000-mile trip. We did deliveries back then, so I worked for a captain, and I was always out to sea on these yachts and living on boats and working on boats. And we had a charter out one day, and the guy said, you'd be great in sales. And I never saw myself as a seller. In fact, I thought my perception of salespeople were that they were obnoxious and unwanted. And he said, I know someone in the apparel business. You should get in the apparel business. And so he gave me a name, and I was about 21 at the time, hadn't really made a lot of my life in terms of what we might consider to be a conventional life anyway. And so I went to see this guy, and he didn't have a job for me, but he suggested that I go to the apparel mart in Los Angeles and just walk up and down the halls and ask for jobs.
Okay.
Wasn't the best advice in the world, but I did it. And I had one suit. I had a white linen suit, and I wore it every Tuesday and Thursday. I went there. I had to sneak past the security guards because I wasn't allowed in the building. And all the major apparel companies in the world were based in this place, or many of them. And I went up and down the halls, and I did that for 6 months until someone hired me.
Wow.
I got hired as a trainee for $12,000 a year, which to this day is the most money I've ever made. And they moved me to Dallas, and I worked as a trainee for a company called White Stag. It was a ladies' sportswear line, and they were out of Oregon. And they were a 100-year-old company, and I had the shortest training period in the history of the company. They felt after about a year that I was ready to move on to a territory. My first sales territory was Arkansas and Oklahoma.
Oh, just
So talk about a fish out of water,
yeah.
right? So I moved to Tulsa, and I would get in my car Monday through Friday, and I would cold call stores in all over those two states, and that's what I did.
No, you say apparel, so tell me what you're actually selling.
I was selling ladies' sportswear.
Okay.
It was skirts and blazers and blouses and pants, and they all kind of, back then, they all kind of matched. Women don't really dress like this now,
Gotcha.
They had this fabric called sailcloth. It was so stiff you could stand it up in the corner, I swear to God. And but it was a really popular brand. And when I got the territory, it was doing $15,000, and in my first year, I got it up to $954,000. And I remember that number because I was so close to $1 million that I almost wanted to pull my own money out of my pocket so I could get there.
And what year was this again?
Oh gosh,
Forget the ballpark.
1980, 81, right in there.
So $1 million, anybody who's in the rep field or the sales field, $1 million, people have $1 million territories today. So in 1985,
Yeah.
that's probably, I don't know, $15 or $20 million equivalent.
Yeah,
to today.
I made $53,000, and I was a kid. I was 22, 23 years old. I was making more money than all my friends. I lived in this apartment complex in Tulsa. It was all single people, all over the age of 21. You had to be over 21 and single to live in this apartment complex. It was a lot of fun, and I made a lot of friends there. But they all went to college and everything, and I was making twice as much money as any of them.
Yep.
And probably enjoying my life a lot more. I think they were sitting in cubicles and driving K cars, and I had a nice car at the time. I had a motorcycle and a skateboard, and I was having a good time. really enjoying life and making good money, and met my wife there, and then took a job with Lacoste, Izod Lacoste, and the alligators.
Which was the brand at the
Which
time,
was the
wasn't
brand. It was the brand.
Yeah.
Polo didn't even exist yet.
Gotcha.
And so that was a red hot brand. I had Arkansas and Oklahoma. And there again, I broke sales records with one of the smallest territories in the company. I would break the sales record for a new category product. So, it was easy to sell the shirt. Everybody wanted the alligator shirt. But, it was really hard to sell the other stuff, the pants, the jackets, and all those things. And even though I had the smallest territory, I led the company in sales in those product classes. So they wanted to put me in management and things like that. And But I ended up getting an opportunity to go into management with a small infants footwear company at the time. I had moved to St. Louis at this point. I had 3 babies in the house, twins, and my son was about 3 years old. And I took a job with a company called Trimfoot. They sold infants footwear. And this was my first chance to be a manager. So I had everything west of the Mississippi. I had about 8 salespeople reporting to me. They were all older than me. They were all really difficult and unmanageable types of individuals.
Yep.
They were really hard to manage. But I earned their respect over time by going out and helping them to achieve their goals. And by working with their difficult customers that they couldn't handle, they started to bring me to meetings, and I developed a reputation as an individual who could solve problems and work with difficult customers and bring business in that way. So my guys they developed a respect for me, and I eventually was promoted to vice president of sales there. But prior to that, I left that company. I moved to New York City. I got a vice president of sales job with a blouse company, and I was there for a number of years. And then Trimfoot came back and offered me a vice president of sales job, and they let me live in Rhode Island.
Gotcha.
So long before people stayed at home to work, I was working remotely. This was a very unusual thing. And the company was based in Farmington, Missouri. Culturally, a very difficult thing, and for me, so I didn't want to move there. And they said, "Well, how about we let you live in Rhode Island? Let's try it out and see, how it went." I was with that company for 32 years.
It went okay then.
And we took that company from $5 million to $38 million. It made a lot of money, and we were the largest infants footwear company in the world. I used to like to tell people that I was the Michael Jordan of baby shoes. That was my, and then at one point they were bought out and things changed there. So I left and went to Commuto Group in New York City. Great company, about a $500 million organization, and they brought me in to start a children's division. So did that. And they were bought out by DSW, and then COVID hit us, right? And when COVID hit us, my division was a small one. The business was going through a very difficult time, and so they closed the division. And I think when things like that happen in your life, you have a choice, right? Move forward or curl up in the corner and start crying. And I decided to move forward. I sat there for a few weeks, collected unemployment, had no idea even how to do that. I'd never done it in my life. I'd been working since I was 10.
Yeah, so you were, this was 3 years ago?
Yeah, about 4 years ago.
Okay, so you're 64 years old,
64,
successful,
65,
professional, vice president, manage people, multi-million-dollar organizations, and you lost your job.
Lost my job, yeah. So I sat there for a few weeks, maybe a month, and I looked at my wife one day and said, I think I'm going to go out and mow some lawns. Just try to earn a few bucks on the side, because it felt very awkward for me to collect unemployment.
Sure.
It was just something, nothing against people who need that. I understand it's a needed thing, but for me it was something I had no experience with. So I took my push lawnmower, threw it in the back of my truck, and I started put a website up and I called my business Old Man with a Truck. And I put a website up that resonated with local people in Bristol County and Swansea, Mass, and that area right there. And very slowly began to build a business. And within about a year and a half, I went from crawling around on my hands and knees weeding gardens for $20 an hour to I had 55 lawns a week and 120 customers. And we grew that business to about $150,000. I was always looking for something to do in the winter. You know, in prior seasons, I had gotten consulting gigs and things like that with some wholesale companies. But when this winter came, put my resume out there, and I got a phone call from this guy at a company called Royal Flush, and he said, you know, I got your resume, and it was you, of course, and you said, I got your resume, but you seem kind of overqualified for this job.
Yeah,
you know,
a little overqualified.
Little overqualified for this, and looking for somebody to, you know, to work in our sales department. You'd be the first person to do it, besides you, and so I asked you what you did. You began to explain it, and I thought to myself, why on earth would I want to go work for a company that lines sewer pipes? You know, it just didn't make any sense to me from any standpoint. But you know, I'm always willing to explore things. So I came in. We had a conversation, if you recall, over here in the conference room. And I remember leaving here and going home and saying to my wife, "Man, I still don't want that job, but I really like that guy. And boy, do they have something that no one else has. You know, I don't think I've ever seen anything like this. This is really an amazing technology. It's going to be an amazing opportunity for someone, you know, but not me, you know." And then you called me again, came back in again. We talked a little bit more, got a little deeper into the position. I got to know you better. And I remember going home from that meeting and saying to my wife, you know, I still don't know about this thing, but man, I like that guy. You know, that guy is a born salesperson, as I believe I am. He understands sales. He gets it. He gets me, and I think I could contribute. You know, and then I got a call from you, and you said we're going to offer you a job, and boy, my stomach just knotted up because I still didn't want the job. You know, but I came in here, and the company put a good, honest offer on the table, and straightforward. And I thought, what the heck, let's give it a shot. And that was 6 months ago. And I can tell you, without doubt, that, with no doubt, having given this a lot of thought, this is the best job I've ever had. Now, I'm not making the money I was making in my past life, but I would tell you that I take a great deal of pride in what we've been able to accomplish here as a team since I've gotten here. And I enjoy immensely what I do day to day. And I love the people I work with at Royal Flush. They're the best people I've ever worked with.
Yeah, well, we'd like to think we're pretty great.
I think you're right.
Well, thank you for the Joe. That was a nice little thought there. Thank you. I wasn't expecting that. Let's dive into, I think this actually is an old-fashioned book, The Psychology of a Salesperson. Does that sound like a book? Sounds like a book to me. I think that's one of your greatest attributes. And so let's go back to you transitioning from in the field to a manager. Right? I think for anybody who's in the sales world, we all usually have aspirations of growth in a company. Usually that comes from being in the field and directly with the customers. A lot of people are successful with that. And usually that next step is the management role, overseeing people. Take yourself back to that time. What were you nervous or afraid of? How was that transition? How did you become successful at being great at what you did to now managing and coaching those people, and your success is ultimately directly tied to them? Tell me what that was like.
Well, you know, again, I mean, it's you know, you respect is earned. You know, you don't get it with a title. You don't get it because your boss sits a bunch of people in the room and tells them that, okay, this is your boss, now listen to what he says. You know, that's not how it works. Salespeople, you know, there's this real misconception out there about what makes a good seller, right? And it's, they have to be good looking, and they have to have a great personality.
Charismatic, very charismatic.
And they've got to have a big line of bull crap, right? And all of that is I don't want to say it's not helpful to be attractive. It's not helpful to be to be able to, spew rhetoric whenever you need to or whatever. But I find that what I look for in a seller when I was looking for people to help us move our company forward is a person who is fiercely competitive. Mm-hmm. And I would tell you that under my exterior, there is a fiercely competitive individual. Mm-hmm. I can accept loss, but I really don't like it. I like winning a lot better than I like losing.
Yep.
And no better example than a man I worked with. He was about 15 or 20 years older than me, and he was one of my salespeople. He was our most successful guy, and he had the Walmart account and some other things. And he was making about $300,000 selling infants' footwear, mm-hmm. and a year. And I went on a call with him one time to a department store, and there was a deal we were trying to pull off in the room that would have earned him, I would say, about $1,500 or $2,000 in commission. Mm-hmm. And we didn't get the deal. And when we got to the parking lot, I don't think I've ever seen anyone so angry as that guy was. And I'm thinking to myself, look at this guy. He's got all this money. He's a millionaire at this point. He saved his money, smart guy. And he is just so upset because he didn't get that deal. Mm-hmm. And that's when I really realized it's not about the money.
Yeah.
It's about succeeding. The most successful sellers I found are people who focus on company goals, not their own individual goals. They focus on winning each small challenge that's placed in front of them on a daily basis, a step at a time kind of thing. But the best ones are the ones that aren't thinking about, okay, how much money am I going to make this year? They're thinking about, how can I contribute to my company the most, And
the money will come.
And the money will come. And the way I earned the respect of those sellers who were all older than me, considerably older, and had been there many years before me, is I just went out there and I paid attention to what they were doing. I treated them as individuals. And I asked to go to the toughest meetings they had. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to go to the meetings where all we were doing is shaking hands, smiling, and hugging each other. Yep. I wasn't needed at those. I don't think a good manager is needed in those instances, mm-hmm. And I earned their respect over the years. And then I began to develop reputation in the industry. You wouldn't know looking at me, but I'm pretty good at math. Mm-hmm. I can do math in my head, and that was very helpful at tables with major department stores and things. So the companies, began to let me play with, I want to say, bigger and bigger toys. They started giving me bigger accounts. Mm-hmm. I was dealing with people in upper management at department stores. There was Guy Farrell who ran May Company, and you're too young to even know who that was. But it was a very large department store chain. I dealt with him one-on-one directly many times. Guys that ran Macy's and Nordstrom, and mm-hmm. this is who, they threw me in rooms with those people, and it was typically, I used to say, if I was at a meeting, it was because something was really wrong or something was really right, and it was usually because something was really wrong.
Sure.
And so you just develop these skills, these crisis management skills, mm-hmm. That are very valuable to companies. Yeah. And you develop people skills. It's easy to sit in a meeting where everything's right.
Very easy.
Don't you think? Mm-hmm. I mean, you're a vice president.
Super easy.
You're a vice president, mm-hmm. And I listen to you here, John. I think you almost enjoy dealing with things that come in here. Mm-hmm. I listen to you. I can hear you sometimes down the hall. Yep. Kyle and we duck our heads a little when you get upset. No, you don't get upset that often. But my point is, I think you're a good manager, and I think one of the reasons is you take over when the guys in the field are having a tough time mm-hmm. with something, right? Yep. What's the latest? Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, of course.
What's the latest thing you handled?
Well, something really small today. The guys are finishing up a project at the Biltmore Garage, mm-hmm. and they went in there to clean up some debris. And there's an Avis car rental company underneath this parking garage, and we had to quarantine a couple of spots. And Chris went there to pick up some debris, and they're going to be going back to asphalt patch something today. When Chris went back today, he was confronted very aggressively by somebody from Avis Car Rental, who was probably just having a bad day, and it almost got physical. Chris said. And so he was turned off and frustrated, and he called me to help. Hey, John, you need to do something here. This guy's out of control.
Right.
And so it was as simple as making a phone call to the person that we're working with and asking him, hey, I need you to help intervene. We've got somebody who's a little upset, and there's obviously a miscommunication between what his jobs and duties are for the day and why we're there and why we're disrupting what he's doing. And so I said, hey, can you go down there? Can you intervene? Can you just simply help explain to this guy that we're working for you? You own the garage. At the end of the day, you're the boss. But what we're doing there today, what the problem is, what we're going to be doing, and the goal that even though maybe this is a little disruption to his day, we're there because we want to get this finished up, get it patched, and in return, he can get back to business. Right? I think when anybody is frustrated or upset or there's a confrontation, it's more in the moment, very, very small picture, right? What's happening to me right now? And then this guy simply wanted to wash a car, and he was being disrupted by that and obviously overreacted. But if you can give the big picture to people, say, listen, yes, you're going to be disrupted by washing your car. We have to be here. It's going to be loud. It's going to be noisy. But this disruption today for 5 minutes is really nothing in the grand scheme of things, us putting it back together, so you don't have any disruption for the next, I don't know, forever, 5-10 years. And so once that was conveyed to that guy, he took a step back, he eased off. Our guys are now going to be able to do their job. In return, there's going to be no more disruption.
Right.
So I think,
and so what did you do? You insulated the people who work here from what could have been a situation that could have escalated into something really negative.
Yeah.
And that's what good leaders do.
Yeah.
Good leaders step in and insulate the people around them from disruption, from issues and problems, and help those people solve those problems. They empower people. That's what good leaders do. And that's what I see here at Royal Flush, I have to tell you. I see good, solid leadership. I mean, look, I am a 68-year-old man. You are 38. Mark Watson just turned 37. Mark is the principal's son who has now taken over the external operations in the company. And never seen two guys work harder. Never seen two guys care about their employees more. You know, this isn't a huggy kissy place. Let's get that straight.
Yeah.
But you know, straightforward, honest, willing to address issues, and when you see your leaders working harder than everybody else, then that to me is how a good company solidifies and moves forward. You know, and that's what I see here. I see two young men that are doing a great job managing a business.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why I like working here. I like coming in here. You know, there's no malarkey in here. You come in, you go to work, and everybody works hard, and everybody's working for a common cause. The guys in the field, can we talk about them for a minute? Yeah. So, you know, this is another area that really resonates with me, and that is that, you know, when yesterday they were giving me a hard time. You know, just for all you folks out there, they nicknamed me Dad. Okay, they call me Dad in here. You know, which has
you could be our dad, by the way.
I could be your grandfather.
Yeah.
Some of these guys out here, but it is just their way of letting me know that they accept me. You know, and again, respect is earned. You know, it's not given. And you know, I came in here, they looked at me and thought, "Oh God, a sales guy." You know, we're out there doing all the work. Well, you know, I know how hard these guys work every day. I watch them. Yeah. They're never late for work. They work late hours sometimes. They work long hours. They work at night. They work shifts that end at 6 o'clock in the morning. I have never heard one of them since I've been here complain. Not even one time.
Absolutely.
And, you know, I've seen some long faces out there, and I can't say I blame them. But I have to tell you, and you know, see, for me, the way I look at it, I work for them. You know, I work for them.
Yep.
And, you know, if I'm successful doing what I'm doing and I'm bringing business to the table for the organization, then it gives these young men who work very hard and are very honest and sincere an opportunity to succeed in their lives.
Yep.
So, see, I get to contribute in that way.
Yeah.
You know, and I've met your son, Connor. He's adorable, you know, and I have met Lola, your new daughter. If everybody knows about John's new daughter, Lola, and I've met Mark's boys, and I'm just the sort of person that, I take it upon myself to feel responsible for their future as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what I'm doing here, hopefully, is helping to build a future for future generations in the organization.
Yeah.
If I'm the first of something, it's great to be. I'm the first sales guy, following you, of course, but still, it's a great feeling to know that we're building something here, and it feels like we are. And someday those boys could be working here. Someday these boys in the out there in the back are leading teams of people out in the field.
Yep. 100%.
And so when I'm out there working every day, all that stuff is in my head. I'm thinking about those things, and when we bring something in, we have a success. I do not view it as my success. I view it as another step in the right direction for the company. Because that's what I'm here for. If I keep doing, having the degree of success that we've been having as a team together, if I keep bringing opportunities to the table, and we keep enjoying the fruits of that labor, it's going to be good for everybody.
Oh, yeah.
And that's when it'll be best for me.
Yep, I feel the same. I have a really, what I think is a crazy feel of responsibility to everybody else here that I didn't think I would have when I first started with the company. It's kind of just organically created that. Some people look at the sales side or the business side and the guys in the field as these two separate entities, but we are incredibly woven together. As simple as, you and I can get every job in the world, but if our guys can't execute the job, what good is it, right? And so it's, we're filtering the work, they're achieving it, and it's just this circle, and they are just as important, if not more important than me and you. And they're awesome. They are incredibly, we're lucky to have them.
I think you're right. And I think you hit on something right there, John, as another thing that I have learned about, and I'm going to use the word preached over the years at sales seminars I've put on and things like that, and that is what I call the good apple and the bad apple. Some sellers think that all they have to do is bring deals to the house, and they've done enough. I went out there, I brought this, I threw it in your lap, and it's a bad deal. It's a bad deal for the company.
Yep.
It's a bad deal for the person on the other side of the table. It's a bad deal for the people that work in the organization. And so I call it good apple, bad apple. I used to take a shiny apple, and I used to take an apple that was all bruised up and banged up, and I'd put them side by side and say, which apple do you want? And the obvious answer is the shiny apple. Well, then don't bring lousy deals to the organization.
Yep.
That aren't going to make us money. That are going to disrupt the process. That are taking us outside of our scale of our scope of work that we provide, services we provide. And so I think that's another skill that sellers develop over the years, and that is bring things home that are going to be meaningful to the organization and doable.
That makes sense.
You hit
right?
on that. Yep.
It's I'm a very make sense kind of guy. Like this really low bar, simple things. Does the deal make sense? Is what we're doing make sense? Is the customers you're calling makes, right? If it makes sense, 99% of the time, it's probably going to work.
Yep.
And again, it sounds so simple and easy, but when something doesn't make sense, you probably shouldn't be doing it, right? Really low bar of entry. Let's go back to your transition through COVID. Honestly, that is really why I hired you, Joe. When you told me the story of your phenomenal career and how successful you were, and I thought you were overqualified, when I understood the story in the background of you starting the landscaping company, that's why I hired you. Not because you had sales ability, because you took the risk and the chance to start your own little business and take this bad situation of COVID and grab it by the balls and say, well, this is what I'm going to do. I think that is the coolest thing. And secondly, we do rag on you because you're a little bit older than us. But the fact that you did that at 64 makes it 10 times more impressive, because you and I know there's a lot of phenomenal people who wouldn't do that at 24. And the age does have something to do with it, Joe. It does. The fact that you were willing to do this and take this risk and not say, well, let me just go out into the other world. You're like, you know what? There's a bad situation. I'm going to turn it into a good one, and I'm going to start a landscaping company. To me, that is absolutely amazing. So take me back a little more to besides the necessity of keeping you busy, making some money. What got your juices pumping about this little landscaping business that you started?
Well, a little something about me that you might not even know, and that is that I am literally an Iron Man. I have run. I was a triathlete for many years, a runner, marathon runner, and then I got into triathlon, and I am an Ironman. I've done Ironman, which is it's a 2.4 mile swim, 112 mile bike, and a 26.2 mile run. It's a lot, and something I learned along the way. I read a book, and it said there will come a moment on the day of your race that you are, that will swim. You'll have these things in your head telling you you got to quit. This is stupid. You can't go on. It's over. And at mile 20 in that race, it took me 13 hours to complete Ironman. At mile 20, I began to get dizzy. I had 6 miles to go. I had gone 148 miles at that point, and I had 6 to go, and I started to get dizzy. It was getting dark out. I'd been out there all day, and I just thought, I stopped running, and I thought, this is it. I don't know that I can go on. And at that moment, I remembered what I read in that book. I remembered that advice, and I had prepared myself for that moment. And what did I do? Well, I'll tell you what I did. I started to walk. I put one foot in front of the other, and it's cliche, but that's what I did. And then I started to run, and then I experienced the joy of crossing an Ironman finish line with literally thousands of people cheering and the announcer calling out my name, and it was a remarkable moment that I was able to achieve. But anything in life, listen, you brought up my age, and if you live life long enough, you're going to take hits, and when it's going to happen, you're going to lose people you love. You're going to, you're going to lose jobs. You're going to have fearful moments, and but you have to think about what you're going to do in those moments, and you have to train yourself for what you're going to do in those moments before they happen. Because if you wait till they happen, this is on my philosophy. If you wait till they happen, you might not react in a way that's going to be the best for you. So when I got that phone call and lost my position as a divisional president, making some substantial money, it was one of those moments. It was one of those moments. It wasn't a moment I hadn't thought about, and
just like training for the
race,
yep.
and it wasn't a moment that I was, completely unprepared for. So the first thing I felt was relief, because for the first time in 40 years, I didn't have sales quotas. I didn't have budgets. I didn't have to do forecasting spreadsheets. I didn't have to report to the CEOs. I didn't have to sit with the account. I mean, it was like, oh my God, I don't have to do that.
Was it surprising to you that was one of the first feelings you had?
Yeah, I don't know if I was surprised or not, but I just remember what it was. Maybe it was. Maybe you're right. Maybe it was. Yeah, and then, like I said, just took a little bit of time to reflect, and then started to gather myself and think, okay, how can I make money right away? How can I do something right away that's going to make me? How can I put $50 on the table in the living room at the end of this day? Well, I got one. Let me go mow a lawn. I'm looking out, and all these, landscapers are out there, and a lot of people are unhappy with the way they're being treated and those types of things. So I threw the website up, and I went out there and just started the business. My first customer was in Portsmouth, Rhode Island. It was a woman. They lived in a beautiful home on the water there, and she hired me to weed her gardens. So I had to get on my hands and knees while this lady looked over my shoulder, told me I missed a spot, this kind of in the heat, in the dirt, in the heat. So I went from, wearing $1,000 suits and sitting in boardrooms in New York City, and I had a fancy showroom there and everything, to crawling around in the dirt in Portsmouth for $20 or $30 an hour. I forget what I even charge them now. And but I learned a lot of lessons each day. And each day I came home, and first I was putting $50 on the table.
Mm-hmm.
Then I was putting $100 on the table. I say to my wife, God, I made $200 today.
Mm-hmm.
Then it was I made $300, and then oh my God, I made $500 this week, and oh my God, I made $1,000 this week.
Yep.
I made $1,000 in a day.
Mm-hmm.
One day I made $2,400 in a day.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and what was I doing? Well, I was learning new things, and you know, John, I'm sure this is true for you as well as it is for me. Doesn't it help to have to live our journey and have a wonderful person there with us?
Oh yeah.
You know, who's there to make us strong? We need help. Who's there to
Mm-hmm.
give us guidance?
Yep.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I'll bet you, Jade, is that for you?
Well, I had this conversation with my wife. Here's the biggest compliment I give to my wife, who I think is absolutely amazing, obviously. I think in life, if you can find a partner that makes you better, you've got a leg up on people. Without a doubt, unequivocally, my wife makes me better. I would not be the person I am today. I would not be in the position I am today. I would not have experienced a quarter of the things. She makes me better. As simple that is the most amazing compliment I can give her. So when you have somebody who supports you, behind you, pushes you, and truly makes you better, I've got the leg up on 95% of the guys out there with
Yeah.
my wife.
Yeah,
So
yeah, and my wife Anne Marie was right there while this was happening. She was watching this, and she would just quietly tell me every day, "Look at you, you're getting up every day, and what are you doing at 64, 65 years old? You're doing something you've never done before every single day.
mm-hmm.
Every day you are learning things."
Yeah.
And I was, it's amazing. It's amazing what you can do when you have to do it,
Oh yeah. Necessity
right?
drives.
When you have to do something, for all of you out there, it's amazing what you can do when you have to do it. Think about that movie with Tom Hanks where he was on the island. Wasn't he?
Castaway.
Castaway, right? He was out there learning how to make fire and finding food and doing all those things. Well, life is like that, you know. And for me, I started to disassemble carburetors and put them back together and fix equipment and sharpen lawnmower blades and change oil and all those things I had never done. And to have that ability, to do that. But every day was an awakening, because when you're doing those things, if you've ever snow skied, you ever snow ski, John?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, every time you go down the hill, you learn something else,
Yep.
right? And, looking back on snow skiing, the most fun you had was when you were learning, right?
Yep.
Because that's your falling and everything. Oh my God, I just made it down that hill
Yep.
without falling for the first. Well, life is the same way. It was for me anyway. And every day I was learning, and every day I was dealing with people. I was having experience with my customers, and I was learning how to fix the equipment, and I was learning, that there's a lot more to mowing a lawn than I thought there was, and there's a lot more to trimming a hedge than I thought there was, and I began to develop relationships with the men and women who work in the mulch yards, in the at the equipment stores, things like that.
Yep.
When I first walked in there, they took one look at me and thought, well, look at this guy. He doesn't belong here, things like that. And I can tell you without a doubt that today, these are my friends. One of the best moments, I was interviewed by the Providence Journal. They did a write-up on me. Fashion executive becomes a local landscaper, and Mark Patinkin, great writer, and he said, what was one of the defining moments for you since you started doing this, and I said a couple things. One is, if you look at my arms, I have scars all over my arms from this. Every time I cut a hedge, I'd rip something, and I'm proud of those scars, and he said, but was there a moment? I said, yeah, there was. I said, I used to go to the transfer station in Warren. It's a dump, right? And when I first went in there, a guy wouldn't even talk to me. His name was Scott, and town employee in Warren. And I went in there one day, and he said, Joe, you are the hardest working landscaper who comes in here. If you don't take it easy, you're going to kill yourself. I've never seen anybody work as hard as you. You're the first guy in here in the morning, and you're the last guy in here before we close. And I have to tell you, that was an unbelievable moment for me. To know that I earned the respect of that individual.
Compliment from the town worker at the dump.
Compliment from the town worker. Yeah. And this began to happen at the mulch yards and things. Guys at the mulch yard, same thing. Joe, you got to slow down. You got to take it easy. You're working too hard. You'll never make it. You'll never last. You're gonna kill yourself.
Yeah.
And those are people. I listen. I feel like I can talk to a CEO and I can talk to a guy in a loading dock, but I have to tell you, and I'm being honest when I say this, I'd rather have the respect of the guy in the loading dock. I think it's harder to earn, that to me is as an individual, it's one of the best things I got out of that, out of Old Man with a Truck, out of the landscape thing, was that.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to ask you one more question, and we're going to wrap it up, Joe. I think we've loved having you so far with the 6 months at Royal Flush. I think you've done an amazing job. I think you're going to do an amazing job moving forward, and you're going to help us reach the goals and heights that we want to. So thank you for that. And my last question for you is, what advice would you give to yourself right now, talking to 25-year-old Joe Sbardella? If there's any little tip, quote, piece of advice, what would you say to your 25-year-old self?
Well, let's see. Listen to what your parents taught you. Return home with your thoughts. Because home is where you learn almost everything you know. And when you get confused in life, go back to your roots and ask yourself what a 10-year-old version of yourself would have done, or what your dad would have told you to do, or what your mom would have told you to do at that time. Those are the rules I've followed, and I think those are the things, honestly, that have gotten me where I am. And God has given me talent, as a seller. It has been a pleasure working here. You use the word so far. I'll use those words too.
So far.
Yeah, so far. There's an old thing about two guys that in a building. I love to tell jokes, as you know, but there are two guys, Pat and Mike, go to a 15-story building. And, Pat goes to the top, Mike goes to the 7th floor, and then Pat jumps off the top of the building. And as he's coming by, Mike looks at him and says, "How you doing?" And Pat says, "So far, I'm doing just fine." So let's hope that we're headed in the right direction as individuals working together. I hope that we continue to have the success we've been having. And I can tell you that I like getting up in the morning. I like coming in here. This is a great place to work. It's a great company full of great people, and I'm proud to represent them.
Thanks. We're proud to have you, Joe. So thank you very much for watching this episode of Royal Flush. Hope you enjoyed it.